Hey everyone, it's Jim of Shiloh Hall. The events of Resurrection Day, did they take place on the first day of the week or on one of the Sabbaths? Did they take place on day 1 of the week or on day 7 of the week? And on the Enoch or Zadokian calendar, did they take place on the 19th day of the first month or on the 18th day of the first month? Well, the vast majority of modern translations all take the Greek and translate it as the first day of the week. So that's what the church is teaching, is that all of the events of the resurrection day are taking place on the first day of the week. But is that what the Greek says? Let's take a look. Okay, let me set the stage here before I visit the passages in question. The Greek for the phrase in question reads like this, and I don't read Greek, so I can't read it to you, but in the transliteration, we see it transliterated to mia ton sabbaton. So you will hear us, and I've done videos where we're using the words mia ton sabbaton, but we need to then uh, translate what this Greek is and what mia ton sabbaton is being translated to. Well, mia is one of the two words in question. Is it to be translated as one, or is it to be translated as first? The vast majority of times, mia is all related to one, singular, and it has some variants on it, but would be singular in their connotation. So that's why when you look and you do some work with Bible Hub and the Greek, you'll see that this word in Greek, which is then hais or slash mia, is translated 282 times, and then I said plus times, like 282 plus times. And the reason I did that is it was translated as 282 times as one, literally as one, but I don't know, I didn't add them up. 30, 40, 50 times it's translated as a variant of one. So I'm going to say it's closer to 320 times probably that this word mia is translated as one. Only 9 times is it translated as first. Only 9 times. So the vast majority of times mia is translated as one. And the other word in question is sabbaton. And is it to be translated as Sabbath or week? Well, this Greek word is translated, which is, transliterated as sabbaton, is translated as Sabbath 58 plus times. And the only reason I said 58 plus times is that there is one time it's uh, translated as Sabbaths, plural. So 59 times it's translated as Sabbath. And then nine times, this word is translated as week. 9 times. If we look at the 9 times, because if you'll notice, in both occasions, mia is translated first 9 times, sabbaton is translated as week 9 times. If you look at them in correlation with each other, you'll see that 7 of the 9 occurrences of first for mia are in concert with 7 of the 9 occurrences of week for sabbaton. So there are 7 occurrences of first day of the week where they've translated mia ton or a variant of mia ton sabbaton to first day of the week. 6 of those 7 occurrences where they've combined them are related to the resurrection, pointing it to the first day of the week instead of one of the Sabbaths. And the passages in question are Matthew 28:1, Mark 16:2, Mark 16:9, Luke 24:1, John 20:1, and John 20, verse 19. The other occurrence of mian and sabbaton, translated as first day of the week, goes back to Acts 27, where we're talking about basically the assembly, the kahal, the church, being gathered for a meal. And in Acts 27, the modern translations are telling us on the first day of the week versus on one of the Sabbaths. But we have the same issue there in Acts 27. So Matthew 28:1 is the first of our passages. And I've just opened it up to the New American Standard Bible because that's going to track with what we're using in the lexicon and other things. So let's just read how the New American Standard Bible translates Matthew 28:1. Now, after the Sabbath, which would be the high Sabbath of the week of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which would have taken place on the day 4 of the week, or a Wednesday, and that is the day that Yahushua or Jesus would have been um, crucified when he died. And that is not the same as the weekly Sabbath, which is coming on the next day 7, which would be the next Saturday. So it's translated like this. Now, after the Sabbath, which would have been that high Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. So that's the rendering in question. Now let's go look at the Greek lexicon. So here is the translation of the NASB here on the left. Now, after the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week. Well, first, I am going to go ahead and just show you that here is the word that they translated. They literally translated as Sabbath here in our scripture in the NASB. It's sabbaton. It's this Greek word. It's the word that I showed you. Greek word I showed you here for sabbaton. Okay, and here they translated it as the Sabbath. And over here is Strong's 4521, the Sabbath, i.e., the seventh day of the week. And then they're showing us the original Hebrew of the word being Shabbat. Now let's go down to our passage in question where it reads, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. Well, here is our Greek word. Now, this is a variant of mia, but mien is just, I'm not sure exactly. Mien must replace tone because we don't have tone here in the use of this in Greek. But we have mien, sabbaton, the two words in questions that are being translated by the NASB as the first day of the week. But if we come over here to Strong's, this is Strong's, it translates as the first, literally mean one, not the first. And that would be Strong's 1520. And then for Sabbaton, it translates as the Sabbath, i.e., the seventh day of the week, with the Hebrew word being Shabbat. And just to go back up here to Mian, they're telling us here in the origin that this Mian is a primary number, 1. Okay, so while NASB is telling us that Mary came to the tomb as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, Strong's, the Greek actually reads, and Strong's also translate as she came to the tomb on one of the Sabbaths. Okay. In Mark 16, we have a similar thing. When the Sabbath, which would be the high Sabbath, was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might come and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week. Okay, again, Mark telling us, NASB telling us in this translation, that it's the first day of the week that they had to come together to the tomb when the sun had risen. Okay, so let's visit this in the lexicon. Very early. Okay, so here is the NASB translation. Very early on the first day of the week. And here is the Strong's translation. Very being exceedingly early on one of the Sabbaths. Mia Sabbaton. One of the Sabbaths. So while the NASB translation and the vast majority of our modern translations are telling us it's the first day of the week, the Greek reads on one of the Sabbaths. And we have the same issues. I won't keep repeating the origins because here we've got the primary number and the Sabbath being the Hebrew origin of the Shabbat. Another passage, let me go back to Mark 19 because as we keep reading down, we go on to So they went out. Let me just start at 8 to set up Mark 16:9. And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had gripped them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Here's the verse in question, verse 9. Now, after he had risen early on the first day of the week, here's the passage in question, teaching the church and leading the church to think all of this is happening on the first day of the week. But let's go visit Mark 16:9. Now, after he had risen early on the first day of the week. Here's the translation. NASB is telling us, the church is telling us first day of the week. But again, Strong's and the Hebrew is reading prote, first. Prote, sabbatu. Now it's worded a little bit different because I think it means something different. Because, and I, in a different video, I spent some time with this, but in prote is not the same word as mia, and prote has more of the context of being first or chief, foremost, principal. And so I have, and it seems reasonable that this means that the very first thing, the first thing that happens, the chief first thing that happens on when? The Sabbath. So proti sabbato would be the first thing on the Sabbath. So while the NASB and the modern translations of the vast majority of them are translating this as very early, when he had risen very early on the first day of the week, the Greek is telling us that he rose early, first thing on the Sabbath. And by the way, here is in prote, it's a contracted superlative of pro. I'll not go there. I don't know. Okay, so there is Mark 16:9. Here is Luke 24. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn. Again, the translation's telling us first day of the week, church teaching us first day of the week. But what does the Greek say? The Greek says, where here we got the NASB, on the first day of the week, the Greek is once again saying mia sabbaton, which is one of the Sabbaths. Let's go read. So we have the Matthew, Mark, and Luke accounts of the resurrection, gospel accounts of the resurrection. All three of those being not the first day of the week in the Greek, but rather one of the Sabbaths in the Greek. Only in our modern translations are we seeing first day of the week. And that's vastly different. Let's go visit John 20 real quick. John 20, it's the same thing. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came early to the tomb. But let's go look at the Greek. Here's the NASB translating it as now on the first day of the week. By the way, they're acknowledging that they're inserting the word day here. But in the Greek, it says but, or now, on one of the Sabbaths. And there is another, when we get to verse 19 of John 20, there's another occurrence. And let me just start at 18. Mary Magdalene came. Let's see if I can pull this over. Mary Magdalene came and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord, and that he has said these things to her. Verse 19. Now, when it was evening on that day, the same day that she had come and seen him, and they go on to say, when it was evening on that day, the first day of the week. And let's go see how they translated that. So when it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, again, is mia sabbaton, one of the Sabbaths. So every one of the gospel accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, every one of them are being translated and translated by our modern translations as first day of the week, and therefore taught by the church as all of these events taking place on the first day of the week. And that's not what the Greek reads. The Greek reads miaton sabbaton, or a version of that, which is all on one of the Sabbaths, which would place it not on day 1 of the week, but on day 7 of the week, the Sabbath, and not on day 19 of the first month, according to the Enoch or Zadokian calendar, but on day 18, the Sabbath. So, what does the Greek teach us? The Greek teaches us that the events of the resurrection day take place on one of the Sabbaths, and that stands in contrast to what the church and modern translations are giving us, which is the first day of the week. All right. Well, thank you, and may you be Baruch. If you think this information is correct, then please like and share so that the message can get out. Thank you.